Hello everyone, and it is that time of the year. This is not a weekly recap. It is time to start doing team previews for the Overwatch League 2023 season. And I know we're a little early, but the Pro-Am starts in about a month. I believe it kicks off on March 23rd. The Pro-Am is going to start. So at least all the teams in the West will have to have their rosters finalized. If you look at the Overwatch League construction rules for 2023, we are at February 21st, the recording of this video. By March 13th, every team has to have a minimum of 5 players signed to season-long contracts. So for me, instead of just trying to rush out 20 videos when we get closer to the season talking about all these teams, I thought we'd slowly start drip feeding some content because we're all bored. It's been a long off season anyway, and some of these teams have pretty much finalized their rosters as a whole. So we're going to start with those teams, and that is why we are here for the Toronto Defiant, I guess, team summary of what to expect for this team in 2023. Toronto as a franchise historically has been a team that has probably one of the most losingest records. They did have a second and third place in the Summer Showdown and Countdown Cup. Wait, what is this? What is this? They get second for the Countdown Cup? We didn't have a tournament. Who's boosting Toronto's numbers? How did they come second? Is this to qualify? Okay, well, someone's inflating Toronto's ego by putting whatever this is in the second one. But they did have a third place finish in the Summer Showdown. But previous to this, the franchise has struggled overall. They've gone back and forth from having a Western roster, 2019. You remember they had like a Western Korean mix. Then they went like a bunch of Western players with Mangachu agilities in 2020. Didn't work. Then they went back to Korean in 2021. Then they went full Korean in 2022. Put a lot of money in, that's what the rumors have been. Chorung got the bag. They got a couple of good players like Twilight, Hisu, Muse. They had good pieces, but were never really able to transition and transforms that into actual wins. Now, once again, the Toronto Defiant have blown up their roster and they have created the old school American Tornado. If you don't know what the American Tornado is, it is essentially a contenders team. We'll just go through Hydron for this. American Tornado is a North American contenders team that has pretty much dominated North American contenders for the last few years. Stands for itself. There haven't been a lot of people that have been able to contend them. There's Revival, Odyssey, but American Tornado has essentially stood strong, and they've always had great players, right? You look at these players that have been in it in 2021. Most of these players, if not all of them, have ended up in the Overwatch League. The only one is like Iced, it looks like, from 2021. So they are a great team. And they have come together after a year of individuals splitting off. Like Hydron was at the Florida Mayhem. Sam and Kaluge were in the San Francisco Shock. Speedily, OG Ultraviolet, they were on the Atlanta Reign. Soma Jeb was on the Florida Mayhem. So they were all over the place for their rookie seasons. But with this new year, they've decided to come back together and compete as a unit. They're very confident. I just did a Plat Chat episode with Sam and Kaluge talking about how much confidence they have in themselves. If you haven't seen that Plat Chat, I recommend checking it out if you're interested in those players. But they said for themselves, their goal is pretty much top 5, right? If they want to be top 5, if they get anything below top 5, they're going to be disappointed. And then from there, how high can they really go as a team? And that's really the question that we're asking ourselves for this roster, because on paper, they have great talent. They all played for great teams. They all had great individual performances last year. But how much as a unit will they be able to pull off? I don't know. And that's really, it's going to be interesting to see where power rankings really land this team. And I don't think we'll really start to know until we start to see them in matches, see how they're performing, because this gives a massive sort of look of like Atlanta Reign. The Toronto Defiant now are like the bad boys of the Overwatch League. They love to sort of be a little bit different. They love to be edgy. They love to shit talk. It's all fun and games. They're usually in good fun and good banter. But for that reason, a lot of people are preying on their downfall. But a lot of people love this team as well because they bring a lot of personality to the league. So let's talk about these players individually and how it's going to work as a whole. Because as much as it's worked in the past for American Tornado, it's a completely different ballgame when you're comparing it to the Overwatch League and the teams that they're going to have to compete against, because the West is stacked. So, DPS line, we got Hydron, Sam, and Speedily. And the elephant in the room that has been shooting around Reddit is they don't have a Tracer player. I posed this question to Sam, and he said all three of them can play Tracer. And realistically, we have seen all three of them play Tracer at some point in their careers. At some point, they obviously can play it in ranked. But do they have a Tracer player that will be able to contend with your Proppers, your Kevsters, the big players of the world and in the West? Are the Defiant going to have a player that can step up to that? Sam seemed to have alluded to that Speedily will probably be the Tracer player, the person who will pick up the reins on that one. But Hydron and Sam can play that. Hydron has played it more, in my opinion, from what I've seen, than the others. But Hydron is also their hit scan player. You don't want your hit scan player to also be a Tracer player, because there's going to be times where you want to play Tracer and a hit scan. That's just how Overwatch has been played for so long. So it'll either be Sam or Speedily. Sam seems to be sort of passing the puck on to Speedily. So likely what to expect from this DPS lineup is that Hydron will be the hit scan player, playing the Widowmakers, the Ashes, the Sojins, all those type of things. Sam is going to play the flex DPS, a lot more of the silly heroes, while also playing the Genji and things like that. And then Speedily will be your Echo Tracer player. Sort of Sam and Speedily will trade what is going to be played in that flexibility. But that's sort of the TLDR of what we're expecting to see from this team. We don't know how it'll properly work out, but that's a good setup. I honestly don't think they're going to have any holes in their roster of who can play what. The question is more, at what level can these heroes be played? Funnily enough, in that Plat Chat episode where we talked to Sam and Kluge as well, they went out on a limb and said that Speedily is the best Echo in the world. They believed, and they said this, and it honestly shocked me. They think that back in 2020, when Echo was being played a lot, Speedily was a better Echo than Fleta was. The 2020 Overwatch League champion, Overwatch League MVP, they believe that Speedily was better at Echo than Fleta. So that's a big claim. It's confidence, and that's what you're going to get from this team. Do I believe it? I'm not so sure, but I would love to see it in this season of Overwatch League. We haven't seen Echo be meta for a very long time. Maybe this could be the moment, and Speedily can sort of break off some of the rust. So that's going to be the DPS line. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We know what we're going to get from these guys. Hydron had a massive year with the Florida Mayhem. People were a little hesitant on him as a hit scan, but I think he really stepped it up, playing over Exy. He's just a great player, especially towards the end on that Sojin. But let's move on to the tank. I was going to say tanks, but it is only the one tank. Kluge is going to be the solo tank of this Toronto team. We're assuming that they might sign another tank, especially when, once again, I'm going to plug our Plat Chat. He said that he doesn't know how to play ball, and it's the one hero that he will never play. It's just, he just refuses to kind of play it, which, seems ironic that we're kind of in a Wrecking Ball meta right now, and everyone is playing that. You're going to need to be able to play the Wrecking Ball. So a part of me thinks that maybe they will sign another player. But Kluge also talked about his inexperience and weakness in playing the Winston. So Kluge, at his heart, is an off-tank player, but if he is not confident in the ability to play some of these main tank heroes like Wrecking Ball and Winston, which are very important in the Overwatch League, I think they might need to sign a player, something adjacent to what Mikey did for the San Francisco Shock last year. Because you can't just have these massive holes, and you can't have a player who's just not confident and doesn't have the, I'm not going to say willingness, but the desire to play those heroes, because it doesn't matter how much he grinds. If you don't have the desire to improve that hero, it can be quite difficult to reach the levels he would need to hit, because we have some fantastic Wrecking Balls in the league. And if you end up in a Wrecking Ball meta and you're not adept at everything that Wrecking Ball can do, you're going to get diffed. So we'll see what ends up happening with Toronto Defiant. Maybe there will be another tank addition that can play some of these main tank roles. It was going to be Reiner. I believe that's sort of what they were hoping for. It's who they wish they had on this roster. But Reiner going through some back issues, I believe it was, or some form of personal issue with health. And, everything that happened last season, he is not coming back and he is not signed to this Defiant roster right now. So we'll see if this signing comes through soon or if Kalush's just going to bite the bullet and learn these series. But at this point, he's running out of time. We have the Pro-Am in just over a month. He's going to need to be able to play these heroes, especially if Wrecking Ball does not get nerfed anytime soon, because Wrecking Ball with the shields, with the way that they've changed minds, seems to be in a pretty good spot. You will at least see a little bit of Wrecking Ball this year, in my opinion. So move on to the supports now. We have OG and Ultraviolet from the Atlanta Reign. They were a very good rookie support line last year. Ultraviolet, Mechanic, Warlord, and OG is also very good on almost every main support character that you could ask for. They didn't have a ton of success on the Atlanta Reign, varying degrees depending on which tournament you look at. But I think the backline has always been solid. I think OG and Ultraviolet, they fit the culture. They fit this team very well. I'm excited to see what they can do. The player who is coming out of left field a little bit is Sir Majed. He's played with some of these guys on like Bobby Wasabi, in contenders, bits and pieces, but isn't as, I guess, storied with a lot of these other players. But from what we've been told, is Sir Majed is just a friend of these guys. They just hang out in a Discord server. They're one of their friends. So when they were building this Toronto roster, they wanted to bring Majed along. You want to have this double flex support buttoned up because it could be a hard meta in the Overwatch League of 2023, and they're just not confident in having OG fill that role and be able to play it to the degree that he needs to. And we saw this last year as well. Bunch of teams had 3 supports so that you have 2 flex supports, that if we go that way, you can still have that firepower in the back line. So that's where Sir Majed is fitting in. Sir Majed played very well for the Florida Mayhem last year. Very aggressive flex support, his Zenyatta especially. He's just one of those mechanical players who just has confidence in himself to just move forward, win the mechanic 1v1, and that gives them the edge. Getting a lot of picks, but I don't know if he finished with the most deaths in the league, almost certainly in the flex support role, but he was leading the deaths by a very long margin early on in the season when we were playing a dive meta. So I'm curious to see how they're going to fit Sir Majed into this lineup. And if Sir Majed's going to get more playtime or Ultraviolet's going to get more playtime if OG's going to have to be playing these main supports. So that's the roster. That's the team as a whole. I think it's very good. It's one of the best Western teams that you could put together. I have a lot of confidence in these players to be able to play at the highest level. The question is, how high can they go? Because they've always said, back when they were on American Tornado, we could compete with the best teams in the Overwatch League. Now they have the opportunity to prove it. And it's pretty incredible, honestly, that they have been able to get all of these players onto one roster in the Overwatch League, and Toronto Defiant has taken a chance on them. They're going to be the bad boys of the league. They're going to stir drama. They're going to talk shit. If you love that, if you hate it, regardless, it's going to be interesting to watch. Can this team compete with the likes of the Houston Outlaws, like the San Francisco Shock, the newly rebuilt Atlanta Reign? Where is this Defiant team really going to land? We'll have to find out as the season goes on, because as much as they've had success on other teams last year, a lot of that success was built on the rosters that they were playing on as well. So how much of their additions can really be weighed into this team? We will see. I do want to give a quick shout out to the coaching staff and the management as well. As with all team previews that I've done in the past, I don't know coaches very well. It's very hard within Overwatch League to really get a good gauge on how much a coaching staff is going to influence a team. Generally in the season you can see that, but we don't know how coaches coach. We don't know how they influence players. We can hear bits and pieces and the players praise the coaches, but we don't have a good grasp. But let's talk about it, because they actually have a pretty stacked team. So in the head coach role, they have Kasaurus, who has been a coach for the San Francisco Shock for the longest time. He is, for the first time, moving away from that team and taking the head coach role. They also have No Hill, who has been the LA Valiant coach from last year. He is spouted as one of the better coaches, one of the most knowledgeable, passionate coaches that there is in the Overwatch League. He said he wants to coach a Western team, even though he is Chinese. and he has ended up on the Toronto Defiant, which is an exciting prospect because that's a lot of brain power going in right now. And to add that in, they also added Wheats. This is someone who has been in the North American Contenders team for the longest time. Just look at his record. He's got American Tornado when he was with all those guys in the past, so he has history with this team. Then moved on with Redbird, which is another team that American Tornado has sort of evolved into. So they have a stacked roster. They have new and old coaches. They have different levels of experience. But I think the thing that gives me the most confidence in this team is they are themselves. They are a team that they know what to expect from each other. They've played with each other. There's a lot of experience. There's a lot of knowledge. And they're bringing that knowledge from different teams over the last year as well and what they've learned. And now they can combine that to being whatever they end up being. So that is why you guys should keep an eye on the Toronto Defiant. They are not a team to be slept on. I think where Sam and Kalushed at number 5 in the West, 4 or 5 in the West is where I'm expecting them to be, but only time will really tell. I'm going to be coming out with more of these team previews as time goes on. I'm just going to do one team after the other slowly in the next month, but the issue is not all teams have rosters yet. You know, the deadline for 5 players was March 13th, I believe it was. Let me confirm. Yeah, March 13th. Every team will have at least 5 players. But even then, 5 players doesn't build out a whole roster. Some of these teams have 5 players right now, but we're looking at them to pick up a 6th to really fill out that roster. So I will be doing them as I believe teams have been finalized. So keep an eye out for those. Make sure to like this video. Leave a comment on what you think the Toronto Defiant are going to accomplish this year. How good do you think they're going to be? And also make sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more team previews moving up. I will be doing power rankings after I've done all these team previews and we get closer to the Pro-Am. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.